That afternoon, the three of them shared tea beneath the flowering plum trees while enjoying pleasant conversation. Although the young nobleman politely asked several careful questions about Yunha's past, she answered with courtesy while quietly avoiding the painful memories that had shaped her life. Lady Han noticed his curiosity but wisely chose not to press the matter. When the visit finally came to an end, the young nobleman thanked them once again for their hospitality before taking his leave. Neither Lady Han nor Yunha realized that the man walking away from the Han estate was no ordinary nobleman. He was the crown prince of the empire, traveling incognito while secretly investigating the conspiracy surrounding the throne. As he rode back toward the palace, one thought refused to leave his mind. The quiet young woman he had met that afternoon looked remarkably like the little girl who had once pulled him from the lotus pond. The memory had not fully returned to him, but for the first time in 10 years, he believed he had finally found the person who had saved his life, and deep in his heart, he quietly decided that this would not be the last time their paths crossed. Several days after the incident in the marketplace, an imperial decree arrived at the Han estate. The Empress Dowager was hosting her annual flower banquet, inviting the empire's most respected noble families to celebrate the arrival of summer. As an old friend of the Empress Dowager, Lady Han received a personal invitation and was encouraged to bring her adopted daughter, Yunha. As their carriage made its way toward the palace, Yunha quietly admitted that she was nervous. She confessed that the last time she had passed through those gates, her life had been destroyed. Lady Han gently covered Yunha's hand with her own and softly assured her that the palace where she had once lost everything would become the very place where heaven returned it. The banquet was held within the magnificent imperial garden, where rare flowers bloomed beside crystal-clear ponds and elegant marble walkways. Beneath colorful silk canopies, nobles exchanged greetings while musicians filled the warm summer air with gentle melodies. The moment Yunha entered the garden, whispers followed her from every direction. Some remembered the little girl who had once been accused of harming the crown prince, while others questioned why Lady Han had chosen to adopt someone whose reputation had been stained by such a terrible accusation. Watching from across the garden, Sunhee struggled to hide the anger burning inside her. Standing beside her was the young marquise who had once been betrothed to Yunha before abandoning her to protect his own reputation. He found himself watching her in silence. She was no longer the frightened servant he had imagined. Walking beside Lady Han with quiet grace and confidence, she seemed like an entirely different person, and for the first time, genuine regret settled heavily in his heart. Before he could gather the courage to approach her, another familiar figure entered the garden. It was the young nobleman who had defended Yunha in the marketplace, but this time he wore magnificent robes, embroidered with the golden dragon of the royal family. The entire garden immediately fell to its knees. Only then did Yunha realize the truth. The man she had shared tea with, the man who had protected her without hesitation, was none other than the crown prince himself. He smiled warmly and assured her there was no reason to be afraid. He explained that he had concealed his identity because enemies of the throne were still plotting in the shadows, but he had never forgotten the courage of the little girl who had once risked her own life to save his. Nearby, the Marquis lowered his head in silent shame. Before anyone could continue the conversation, attendants announced the arrival of the Empress Dowager. The elderly ruler appeared noticeably frail. Her complexion had grown pale, every breath seemed labored, and she required assistance with each careful step she took. Few people knew that she had been suffering from a mysterious illness for months, one that even the finest imperial physicians had failed to cure. Lady Han stepped forward carrying a beautifully crafted lacquered box and gently placed it into Yunha's hands, asking her to present the gift. Inside rested a single glowing petal from the moonheart blossom. Lady Han explained that many years earlier, the Empress Dowager had shown compassion by ensuring an innocent woman received a proper burial when almost everyone else had turned away. This gift was offered as an expression of gratitude. The Empress Dowager accepted the blossom with a warm smile and lifted the glowing petal to her face. The instant she inhaled its delicate fragrance, she was overcome by a violent cough. Dark blood splattered across the white marble floor. Panic erupted throughout the imperial garden. Without hesitation, Sunhee pointed accusingly at Yunha and cried that she had once again attempted to poison a member of the royal family, just as she had tried to murder the crown prince years before. Mion, who had accompanied her family to the banquet, immediately added that some people could never escape their true nature. The emperor's expression darkened. The accusation that had haunted the empire for 10 years echoed through the garden once again. The Imperial physician rushed forward and knelt beside the Empress Dowager. After only a brief examination, he declared that the strange flower had worsened her condition. Lady Han remained perfectly calm. Stepping forward, she addressed the Emperor directly and explained that the Empress Dowager had not been poisoned by the flower. She had already been suffering from poison long before the banquet, and the Moonheart Blossom had merely forced the hidden toxin from her body. As though confirming every word she had spoken, the Empress Dowager slowly opened her eyes. Color gradually returned to her face. The weakness that had burdened her for months melted away before everyone's eyes. She drew a deep, effortless breath before rising to her feet without anyone's assistance. The entire court stood frozen in disbelief. Lady Han calmly turned toward the Imperial physician and asked why he had failed to recognize a poison that had now revealed itself so clearly. The physician's composure crumbled. Sweat covered his forehead as he desperately searched for an answer. Lady, Han took another slow step toward him, her voice remaining calm even though every word struck with the force of a hammer. She reminded the court that this was not the first time he had declared an innocent victim beyond saving. 10 years earlier, he had pronounced the unconscious crown prince beyond recovery and testified that the young prince might never awaken. His testimony had condemned an innocent mother to death. The physician collapsed to his knees, begging for mercy. He finally confessed that someone had paid him to lie all those years ago. A wave of shocked gasps swept across the garden. The Emperor rose from his throne, his face pale with disbelief as he demanded to know who had bribed him. The physician opened his mouth to reveal the truth. Before a single name could escape his lips, a hidden dart shot through the crowd and struck him in the neck. Within seconds, black poison spread through his veins. He collapsed onto the marble floor, dead. Silence fell over the Imperial garden. The Emperor slowly turned toward the place where the dart had come from, but the assassin had already disappeared. For the first time in 10 years, doubt entered his heart. If the physician had lied, then perhaps the little girl had never harmed the crown prince. Perhaps an innocent woman had died because of his own judgment. As the banquet came to an uneasy end, the Emperor quietly watched Lady Han and Yunha leave the garden together before issuing a secret imperial order. Every detail surrounding the case from 10 years earlier was to be reopened. Someone had buried the truth. Now the Empire would uncover it. When Lady Han and Yunha returned to the Han estate that evening, they found someone waiting for them beneath the silver glow of the moon. The Crown Prince. This time, however, he wore the robes of his true station and carried himself with the dignity of the future ruler of the Empire. Without hesitation, he lowered himself to his knees before them. Both Lady Han and Yunha were startled and immediately urged him to stand. He quietly refused. He confessed that because of him, Seo-rin had died. Because of him, Yunha had suffered for 10 long years. It was a burden of guilt he had carried every day of his life. Yunha stepped toward him and gently asked him to stand. She told him that she had already forgiven him because he had only been a child who had been hurt, deceived, and manipulated by those around him. No loving parent, she said, would ever blame a child for something beyond his understanding. With a bittersweet smile, she quietly admitted that she only wished her own father had protected her with the same devotion that the Emperor had shown his son. Emotion filled the crown prince's eyes. For years he had searched for the brave little girl from his fading memories. He remembered her courage and kindness, yet her face had slowly disappeared from his mind. Only after hearing her speak beside Lady Han that day had those forgotten memories finally begun returning. For the first time in many years, Yunha finally felt safe enough to speak openly about the pain she had buried inside her heart. She told Lady Han and the Crown Prince everything. She described how her world had changed overnight after her mother's death. The woman who had always protected her was gone, and the family she had left behind no longer treated her as a daughter. They treated her as a burden. The entire kingdom believed she had tried to harm the Crown Prince. She remembered watching helplessly as her mother sacrificed herself and reaching desperately for her mother's hand as she was taken away. Afterward, the rumors never stopped. Wherever she went, people whispered. No noble family wished to associate with her. No one wanted the disgrace attached to her name, even her own father. The man who had once promised to protect her gradually began avoiding her. The shame became too heavy for him to bear, and instead of defending his daughter, he hid her away from the world. He removed her from the main household. He treated her like a servant, not because she had committed any crime, but because every time he looked at her, she reminded him of his own failure. Lowering her eyes, Yunha quietly admitted that she truly believed her father had once loved her. Ambition and shame had simply changed him. The promise he had made to her mother, that he would protect their daughter no matter what, had quietly disappeared. Lady Han listened in silence, and every word shattered Seo-rin's heart all over again. The daughter she had sacrificed everything to save had carried this unbearable pain completely alone. Unable to stop herself any longer, she reached forward and pulled Yunha into a tight embrace. She held her so tightly because she feared that if she let go, she might lose her all over. Again, Yunha stood frozen in surprise. Her mother-in-law had always treated her kindly, but this embrace felt completely different. It was not the embrace of a woman offering sympathy. It was the embrace of someone who had spent years searching for the person she loved most. As Yunha looked into Lady Han's face, something inside her stirred. For the briefest moment, she thought she saw someone else. The Crown Prince quietly admitted that he had always believed the truth was different. Deep in his heart, he had never accepted that the little girl who had risked her life to save him could also have been the monster everyone accused her of being. He thanked Yunha for forgiving him. Yunha smiled gently and replied that her mother would have forgiven him as well, because Seo-rin had always been the kind of woman who protected the innocent before herself. The Crown Prince slowly rose to his feet. For the first time in many years, the burden he had carried in silence finally became lighter.